All right, so we're going through Exodus chapter 20. We have just finished, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. That's verse 16, the 8th commandment, as we number them. Verse 17, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. Okay, so let me put this out for a second. Verse 17, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. And then at this point, this is where Lutherans divide, and we say that that's the 9th commandment, and then the 10th commandment is everything in the neighbor's house. So you shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant, or male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. But yeah, so for Lutherans, this is how we get to the number 10, because we know that there's 10 commandments, but God doesn't say the first commandment is, the second commandment is, the third commandment is. So Lutherans, we say, okay, well we're going to break this part up into 2 commandments. It doesn't really matter how you count the commandments as long as you get them all. In here, the way that it's divided, the first one is your neighbor's house. The second is everything in or related to your neighbor's house. This includes not just property, but also relations. Neighbor's wife or his male servant, female servant, ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. So coveting is when you desire something to the point where you're plotting to take it. It's not just you got a nice car, you've got a nice house, but it's, I want your house. In fact, I'm going to fantasize about taking your house. We talked about this with the earlier commandments with something like you shall not steal. This is the precursor to stealing. The fantasy about, the planning about, I want to take that person's. So before you go and you commit the act of stealing, you almost always commit the act of coveting. Now maybe you're a kleptomaniac and you're walking, hey, somebody left their phone out, and you just take it. Yeah, that's still stealing, but a lot of times when you think about, I want my neighbor's stuff, I want that thing, how can I get that thing? How can I plan to take that thing that's not mine? And that's coveting right there. Later on in the New Testament, Paul talks about the law, and he says that I would not have known that it was a sin to covet except that God revealed it to me. So there's some sins that there's some commandments that are kind of written on our hearts that God, as he makes us, we know intrinsically we have some sort of feeling against murder, that murder is wrong or that stealing is wrong. There's a degree of ew that we feel when it comes to some sins. Whereas other sins like coveting, we only know that it's a sin because God told us in the Bible that it's a sin. This is what Paul is saying later on. It's probably cross-referenced here, actually. Let me see. Verse 17. All right. So understood as 2 commandments. Let's see. Unlike earlier commandments that address action, these two focus on intentions. Ambrose says, love of money, then, is an old and an ancient vice, which showed itself even in the declaration of its divine law. The Hebrew word for covet is sometimes to crave, if you prefer that. All right, yeah. Okay, I'm not seeing the reference that I was thinking about for the New Testament. All right, yeah, so this is coveting. It's desiring something that's not yours, craving something that's not yours. This one's pretty straightforward, where the other commandments have some nuance here. This is just I've got a rule for one of my kids, the Michael rule. If it's not yours, don't touch. But it can extend to if it's not yours, don't take. Don't plan, don't plot, don't scheme on taking things. In the explanation, Luther's small catechism explanation, he talks about it's not just about trying to steal like you're breaking in and committing a heist, but also planning on how are you going to turn your neighbor's wife against him? How are you going to turn his children against him? How are you going to turn his servants against them? If you're running a business and you've got another business and you're saying, well, how can I make the employees at that business turn against their employer so then they come over and they work for me? That sort of inter-business politics. There's actually moral commands regarding that. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, we offer a great benefits package at our company. It's another thing to say, hey, you know what? You should really hate your boss. I'm going to really undermine your relationship with your employer. Okay, so that's the 10 Commandments. We usually, Lutherans close the 10 Commandments for what does God say about these commandments. Really, that is, what verse is that? That is verse 5. We put verse 5 at the end. You shall not bow down to anything or serve them, for I, Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers, of the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. Lutherans like to put that at the end. We call it, what does God say about these commandments? It isn't at the actual end in verse number, but it is what he says about these commandments. All right, so God gives all these commandments to Moses. Well, actually, before I go, real quick, any questions, comments, concerns about any of the 10 commandments that we've gone over?
My only comment
Yes.
on the one you just looked at was, it's not only the plotting, but the actual act of trying to get those things.
Yes.
Isn't it just oriented, you're less likely to see what you have and the blessings you've been given.
Right.
The whole focus is what someone else has.
Yes, there is, so the inverse of every commandment. Don't do the bad thing, but instead do a good thing. So you shall not steal. The opposite of that is you should help your neighbor take care of his belongings. You shall not covet. The opposite of that is, yes, help your neighbor keep his belongings, but also be grateful for what you have. So when you're coveting other people's stuff, you're not being grateful for what God has given you. You're not valuing your own house or wife or things that you have. You're saying, I don't want this, I want that. Yes, sir.
I think the wanting itself is a sin, right? So you drive a nicer car than I drive. Wanting your car, even if I'm not buying to get your car, is itself a sin because it's saying God is unjust. He is giving you what I want instead of giving me what I want.
Yeah, I deserve. Yeah.
Wanting itself. And like all sin, it harms us.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
The reason God wants to do it is not because he doesn't like sin, but because sin is bad for us.
It is bad for you, yeah.
And as you said, when I want things that aren't mine, I just become ungrateful for that which I do have.
Sure.
And I don't recognize God's grace and mercy and give me what I have. Instead, I want what I have.
Yeah. I don't want this. And we haven't gotten to this point yet when the Israelites get manna in the desert and say, we loathe this miserable food. God is giving you this blessing, and you're saying, I want the meat pots in Egypt. Yeah. And now there is a way to desire things without it necessarily being sinful. So, for example, say you desire better health. Or whatever. And you pray to God and you ask for. So there's a difference between asking God for a thing, saying, God, please give me health, please. My car is a junker, or I would love,
The difference is between saying, I want good health, I would like to have better health,
Yeah.
I have a nicer car, versus saying,
I want my neighbor's car.
he's got a good car, why don't
Yes.
I? Right? Like, that person's healthy, how come I'm not?
Right.
And that's the
Yeah, that's a good distinction. I like that. It's not, I want better health, it's I want your health.
Right.
I want your car. All right, so Moses on the mountain gets these 10 commandments. Verse 18. Now when all the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled. They stood far off and said to Moses, you speak to us and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us lest we die. This is one of the smartest things the Israelites ever say, especially in contrast to everything else that they say. Moses said to the people, do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, that you may not sin. The people stood far off while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. Is it Elijah? It's not Elijah. It might be Ezekiel. Who's a prophet who... No, I think it is Elijah. He goes off and he hides in the, I think it might be Elijah. He goes and he hides in the mountains, and then there's a thunder and there's a fire on the mountains, and there's a great wind on the mountains, but God is not in the fire, and God is not in the earthquake, and God is not in the wind, but he's in the gentle, the whisper. Right. And this is one of the verses that contrasts to that, because God is here in the fire and the lightning and the trumpet and all of this loud cacophony right here. But God is also in the whisper, in the gospel as well here. Now, the Israelites are being tested by God. I've said this before, but I like to say it because it makes me sound smart, I think. Testing and tempting is often the same word in Greek. What's the difference? Because God tempts no one. We hear this in the Bible. But God does test people. What is the difference between being tempted and being tested? Do you know? With a temptation, the expectation is that you will fail. The goal is to get you to fail. Satan tempted Adam and Eve because he wanted them to fail. With a test, the expectation is you will pass. You've taken your classes. You've been given the information you need. Now it is time for you to prove that you have what you need. And this is God's way of giving you the confidence. You're being tested. You pass the test. You say, oh, God is taking care of me. God did prepare me for this. God did tell me what I needed to know. I passed the test. I have greater confidence as a result of a test. Versus a temptation where the goal is, I want to trick you into sinning. So God is not tempting the Israelites here, but he is testing them. He is making them more, well, if they obey him, he's making them more confident. God is testing you that you may fear him. The fear of him may be before you, that you may not sin. I brought this one up as well before. C.S. Lewis talks about God Aslan, as a lion, and one of the girls, I don't know, the younger girl, Lucy, I think, is the younger. I think Lucy, she is talking to Mr. Beaver, and they're talking about Aslan, and Aslan is a lion. This comes out, and she says, well, I thought Aslan was a human. He's a lion. Is he safe? And Mr. Beaver says, no, of course not. He's a lion. He's not safe, but he's good. And that's the difference here. God is not safe in that you can do whatever you want and there's no consequences. That you can run up to the mountain of God and there's no consequences. At least the Israelites understood this. They didn't want to talk to God face to face because they were terrified of God. God was, fire and lightning and thunder and everything like that. And this is a good thing. You should have this fear of God. But at the same time, the intermediary, Moses, protects the people from God. He is the one that stands between the people and the wrath of God. Now, later on, of course, with Christ, we have that perfect intermediary because Moses didn't die for the sins of the people. Moses ended up dying for his own sin, actually. But Jesus dies for the sins of the people and makes it so we can approach God without that fear of judgment. But at this point, Moses is standing between the people and God. And rightly so, they fear God's wrath, and they should fear God's wrath. This is how. This is one of the greater motivations to be obedient here, because the wages of sin is death. This is a fact. Now it would be perfect. It would be better if they obeyed God because they loved God, but the other reality is that they should fear God. That's another good reason to obey God. God can be loved and feared at the same time. We do not obey God because we think it saves us, but we obey God because we love him and he loves us. All right, here after this point, it's going to get into some technical stuff about altars, slaves. So there's going to be the 10 Commandments, and then there's a bunch of other commandments after that. It's going to be a little while before you get to what happens with Moses and the rest of the people. So he starts describing the tabernacle and things like that. So we'll go through this, but there's going to be less sort of broad applicability. Verse 22, and the Lord said to Moses, thus you shall say to the people of Israel, you have seen for yourselves that I have talked to you from heaven. You shall not make gods of silver to be with me, nor shall you make yourselves gods of gold. An altar of earth you shall make for me, and a sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I will come to you and bless you. And if you make an altar of stone, you shall not build it out of hewn stones, and you shall wield your tool on it. You profane it. You shall not go up by my steps to my altar, that your nakedness be not exposed to it. All right, so God is giving a bunch of specific rules about altars. He's going to later on start giving more specific rules about worship spaces like the tabernacle. Much later on, you've got the temple. That's King Solomon. But at this point, you're going to get the tabernacle where it's going to kind of be a moving, it's a temple of God, but it moves around where God's people are, which is what we have in Christ. We have the temple moves around with us wherever we are is Christ. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so a lot of the church design that we have is based on a lot of stuff here. The Old Testament tabernacle, temple, and altars. God doesn't specifically say that we necessarily have to have these specific lampstands and bowls and things like that in churches, but we're reflecting what we see in Scripture. For us, do we need, yeah, well, that's the question. What would you use an altar for? What is the purpose of an altar? Do you know? Sacrifice. Do we still sacrifice to God? Not in the same way, but we do. We don't sacrifice goats and stuff like that, but our sacrifice is a contrite heart, a broken spirit. Our sacrifice would be things like our prayer, our praise, when we're singing, our offering. So this is when I receive the offering, I go and I face, in this sense, it is an altar. There's some people who fight, is this an altar or is this a table? It's both. It's a table of the Lord, right. So this is where we go when we eat the Lord's Supper. So it's a table because we eat from it. It's also an altar because this is where we bring forward our offerings. And this is why we have it at the front of the church. There are a lot of congregations that they want to remove this and say, well, this is kind of Old Testament-y type stuff. We don't need an altar anymore. Well, when we stop offering things to God and we stop giving prayers to God, then we can remove it for the time being. I think it makes sense to continue to have it. Now, this is in the chaplaincy, we had this problem a lot, is there's not a lot of altars. So we would build just a bunch of boxes or the front of a Humvee or something like that. And this is where we would have a worship service. It's a centerpiece. An altar is a centerpiece. It's not off in the corner, but it's a useful thing to direct our focus. You can absolutely meet together in a church that doesn't have an altar, but it does serve a function that is useful for people. It's not a sin for your church not to have an altar, but it is a benefit if you use it properly to have an altar/table. And there's a bunch of arguments over whether the altar should be a freestanding altar or should be up against the wall. And there's reasons behind the arguments. I think that I'm right in having a freestanding altar. It is not the most ancient configuration. The more ancient configuration is up against the wall. The problem is when I am consecrating the elements, when I'm doing the Lord's Supper, if it's up against the wall, I have to stand on this side, and I'm facing away from you guys. And historically, the problem is people couldn't hear what was happening in the consecration of the Lord's Supper. It was in Latin too, so if you didn't speak Latin, I'm sorry, you're out of luck. So the best that they could hear, without amplification, when I'm facing away from you and I'm speaking another language, when I'm saying hoc est corpus meum, they hear hocus pocus. That's where the phrase comes from. Hocus pocus, then there's some bells, then all of a sudden I've got this magical bread and wine. And that's all that they understood. So I think that it's better for me to face you and to speak in a language that you understand with a microphone so you can all hear what's going on. And when Jesus says, take, eat, given for you, I'm facing you because I'm repeating Jesus' words to you. I don't need to face him and say, take, eat, take and drink. I'm not telling Jesus this. So this is my argument for why I have this. There's a reason behind this. Now, if somebody's not wrong if they have an altar up against the wall. There's a reason why we do things the way we do things. There's a reason why they do things the way they do things. And I just happen to be right. At least I'd like to think so. I'm open to correction, of course. All right, so let's see. I guess, again, he reiterates in the section, God reiterates, you've heard my voice from heaven. You know that I'm real. It would be really dumb of you to go and make a silver or a gold object and start worshiping that as though that was God. Because the silver and the gold has never talked to you. Like if you're going to make a golden calf, for example, it would be really dumb of you to do such a thing since you have just literally heard the voice of God. Now, the Israelites didn't want to speak to God directly because they didn't want to die. But they heard his voice. So they know God exists. They know God is up there on the mountain. It would be really dumb of them to then go and make a silver or gold idol to worship it. That'll come into play like chapters later. So this is what God says. Let's get into Exodus 21. These next sections, some of them are, it might seem a little bit more dry. They've got specific application. but it's not going to be, the narrative is basically paused here. The narrative pauses, and then this is instruction in this section. But since we're going all the way through Genesis and Exodus, let's go through it anyway. Chapter 21, laws about slaves. This is not controversial at all. Now these are the rules that you shall set before them. So God is telling these rules to Moses. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th he shall go free for nothing. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him to God, and he shall bring him to the door of the doorpost. His master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall be his slave forever. All right, so first and foremost, something we have to address is that not every time the word slave, in Greek it's doulos, it's often translated as servant, but it's the same word. Not every time the word slave is used is referring to the same thing. There's different reasons why people would be slaves, and there's different configurations of what it means to be a slave. So in the New Testament, in the kind of Greek system of being a slave, a lot of times a slave would be somebody who, they didn't have inheritance, but they were taken care of the family. They were a part of the family, as opposed to somebody who's a hired hand, who shows up, works for the day, and then goes home. They're not a part of the family. They're not related to the family. A slave would more be somebody who's almost an extended part of the family. It seems like a downgrade, but often the slaves in the New Testament were more educated and better taken care of than even the children were. Because the children of a rich person, they would go out and do whatever, party or do whatever they want, but the slave, he has to take care of the finances, and he has to take care of the household, and he was in charge of a lot of these things. So he would be really well educated, and he would be really well trusted. Kind of like a nanny, yeah, but notice we don't have so much nannies and kind of butlers and people kind of live in people like this anymore. But so it's hard for us to put in context that when the Bible talks about things like slaves and servants, it doesn't mean what we mean in the 21st century necessarily. So in this case, when you buy a Hebrew slave, okay, so why, is this just buying and selling people like commodities? Not really. Later on, it'll get into the concept of, it's not so much indentured servitude, but the idea is, if you're not able to take care of yourself, it's a charitable thing to do to say, okay, you can't work enough, or you can't make enough money to take care of yourself. So here's what. I will pay you to live in my household. Well, I won't pay you, but you will live in my household and you'll take care of my kids for 6 years, and all of the money you owe me will be forgiven. So rather than paying me back, you're going to work off your debt instead. And then after 6 years, the 7th year, you're freed. But what if the person really likes living with this family? Well, that option is available for them to permanently be a part of the family as well. So this is not the same as like antebellum slavery. This is often what is thought of it. That is not how the slaves in America were treated, or the slaves in the Moroccan, the European and the Arabic slave trade. They're not treated the same as this. So again, when you hear the word slave, don't immediately assume it's always talking about the same thing. It's actually really complicated. All right, chapter 21, verse 7. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who has designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has broken faith with her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as with a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, her marital rights. And if he does not do these 3 things for her, she shall go out for nothing without payment of money. The idea of arranged marriages seems extremely foreign to us, and even kind of like icky, because everybody wants to kind of be their own master. And whether or not that's the system, that system itself is wrong, these are laws dealing with systems that already existed. So God is not saying, I hereby institute slavery, and everybody should go get slaves, and you should go and make slaves of people. But rather, God is already talking about a system that exists, a system of slavery, and he's giving rules for it. So if this is how people are already living, these are the restrictions that he's placing on how they are treating one another. So this is not necessarily an outright This is not saying go and make slaves of people, go and take people's slaves, go and treat people as slaves, go treat your daughters as slaves and sell your daughters and stuff. But he's saying when these things are happening, this is how you mitigate the situation. This is how you behave in this situation in a way that is honorable and takes care of people. All right, I'll keep going. Whoever strikes a man so that he dies shall be put to death, but if he did not die, but if he did not lie in wait for him, but God let him fall into his hand, then I will appoint for you a place which he may flee. But if a man willfully attacks another, to kill him by cunning, you shall take him to the altar that he may die. Okay, so this is less talking about slavery. This is more we talked about this in the 5th commandment when this came up. There's a difference between manslaughter and murder. There's a difference between you get into an argument with a guy and you get into a fight over something and you don't want him to die, but he ends up dying as a result of that fight, and you're lying in wait intentionally trying to kill a person. And this is a distinction being made for accidental deaths. For an accidental death, God will appoint a place for him to go and to flee. So basically he's going to kind of be in exile versus an intentional murdering of a person. That person doesn't have the opportunity to go into exile. That person is put to death. So this is God giving kind of a legal distinction here between killing and murder. So again, this kind of harkens back to the 5th commandment. All right, and then we're going to have other, you might see echoes of other commandments here as well. Whoever strikes his father or his mother shall be put to death. So remember, honor your father and mother, and this is the opposite of that. Whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him, shall be put to death. So stealing and selling people is a no-no. Whoever curses his father or mother shall be put to death. When men quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or his fist, the man does not die but takes to the bed. Then if the man rises again and walks outdoor with his staff, he who struck him shall be clear. Only he shall pay for the loss of his time and shall have him thoroughly healed. So this is going to be a distinction between, let's say, assault and battery and murder, or assault and battery and homicide. So again, this is not God. Again, this is not God saying you're allowed to kill people. You're allowed to beat people up as long as they serve. This is not God endorsing these activities, but God is saying when these activities occur, these are the consequences, these are the laws to follow for these activities. Verse 20, when a man strikes his slave, male or female, with a rod and the slave dies under his hand, he shall be avenged. But if the slave survives a day or two, he shall not be avenged, for the slave is his money. This is difficult, but again, it's difficult to understand. I'll basically leave it at that. If the slave survives, so this is a difference between, again, the distinction between outright murdering a person on purpose and hurting a person very badly. And this is kind of distinguishing the variation of the severity of a crime here. Okay, verse 22, this is one that actually comes up in abortion arguments. When men strive together and hit a pregnant woman so her children come out, but there is no harm, then the one who hit her shall be fined as the woman's husband shall impose on him, but he shall pay as the judge determined. But if there is harm, then you shall pay, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. Now, you've heard an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. You've heard this before. This is referenced later on in the New Testament. You'll notice, what was that? It's payback. Well, that's how they were using it. You hit me, I hit you. And this is kind of the way that people had been using this passage. But what this is saying here, this is not saying that every person must get vengeance, you must get your pound of flesh from the other person. Rather, this is saying that the consequences of a crime should fit the severity of a crime. If you do something bad to a person and you put their eye out, then this isn't necessarily that you get put to death, but the consequences should be balanced. So this is the principle, an eye for an eye, rather than the whole head for an eye. This is more about the equality of consequence for action, and not about any time somebody does something bad to you, you have to do something bad to them in return. Remember, Jesus comes out with the turn the other cheek and all these other statements that he makes But yes, that's how people were taking it. They were taking it as, well, eye for an eye means that anytime somebody does something bad to me, you hit me, I hit you. And that's that's again not the point. This is taught. This is prescriptive for the consequences. This is not saying go out and take somebody's eye out. This is saying if this happens, this is how you deal with it. Again, this whole section can be better understood as God explaining, like, this is how you resolve the bad situation you shouldn't have been in the first place. Yeah. All right, when an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall be stoned, and his flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall not be liable. But if an ox has been accustomed to gore in the past, and his owner has been warned but has not kept it in, and it kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and his owner shall also be put to death. If a ransom is imposed on him, he shall give for the redemption of the life whatever is imposed on him. If it gores a man's son or daughter, he shall be dealt with according to the same rule. If the ox gores a slave, male or female, the owner shall give to that master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. 30 shekels of silver is going to be very important later on. This is the price of a slave. You're going to notice that 30 pieces of silver is exactly what was paid, not just to Jesus, but I believe, is it Elijah or Ezekiel? It's one of the prophets. They get 30 pieces of silver for a field or something like that. It's the price of a slave. It's not enough is the problem. It's not a huge amount. So this is talking about the consequences of, let's say you've got a dog that bites everybody who ever comes to your house. If your dog bites somebody, then bring the dog in. To tie your dog up. But if you're not taking care of your animals and people who come over are constantly getting bit, you are responsible for what your animals are doing. If there's a habit, if there's a pattern of violence, so you can't say, well, I didn't kill him. My ox killed him. Yeah, my ox kills everybody that I set him loose on, but that's the ox's fault, not mine. This is a way of saying, no, you're murdering by extension. You're using your animals to harm other people. All right, let's keep going. Verse 33, when a man opens a pit or when a man digs a pit and does not cover it and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall make restoration. He shall give his money to the owner, and the dead beast shall be his. When one man's ox butts another so that it dies, they shall sell the live ox and share its price, and the dead beast they shall also share. Or if it is known that the ox has been accustomed to gore in the past, the owner has not kept it, again like the last time, he shall repay ox for ox, and the dead beast shall be his. Okay, so in these situations, something bad happens, even the person who does something bad, just because you do something bad doesn't mean you automatically forfeit all of your property, but rather the consequences, you're gonna pay for the damage that you've done, but you get to keep the damaged thing, basically. So if your actions cause another man's ox to die, you gotta pay for the ox to replace the ox, but because you paid for it, that ox is now yours. It's just kind of the sensible consequences of that. In our society, we kind of have a forfeiture of goods. So if you destroy if you destroy your neighbor's car, you have to pay for his car, liability insurance, but you don't get to keep the destroyed car that you essentially paid for. That's the difference here. So it's less about punishment and it's more about responsibility. So if you break somebody's stuff, you pay for it, but you break it, you bought it, means now it's yours. You paid for it, now it's yours. That's kind of what's going on there. Chapter 22, if a man steals an ox or a sheep and kills it or sells it, he shall repay 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. If a thief is found breaking in and is struck so that he dies. Okay, so the first part is the distinction. If you're intentionally trying to get your neighbor's stuff, stealing, then the consequences of stealing is you're going to repay these things. You'll remember Zacchaeus, the wee little man, talks about he's going to repay everybody he stole from, I believe it's fourfold, 4 times over. If a thief is found breaking in and is struck so he dies, there shall be no blood guilt for him. But if the sun is risen on him, there shall be blood guilt for him. He shall surely pay. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. If the stolen beast is found alive in the possession, whether it's an ox or donkey or sheep, he shall pay double. All right, so if somebody breaks into your house in the middle of the night to steal stuff and you kill him, you're not responsible for his death. However, if you see somebody in the act of stealing your stuff, you're not allowed to just go out and kill them, but rather the consequences, there are other consequences that should fall on him instead of being put to death. So the consequences for stealing, if you can stop him, are that he has to pay back, he has to pay double, that sort of thing. Versus if somebody's breaking in your night, in the middle of the night, you don't know if they're going to steal your stuff, you don't know if they're going to murder, you don't know what their motivation is. So if they die, then you're not guilty for that. I remember there was a case, there was a legal case a while back where this guy, houses in the neighborhood were regularly being broken into. And this one guy knew that his house was going to get broken into. So he pretended that he wasn't in the house. He parked his car down the street and he hid down in the basement of the house. And he waited for the people to break in. It was like two cousins, a male and a female. They were like 17 years old or whatever. They broke into his house and he waited at the man broke into his house. He waited at the bottom of the stairs and he shot the guy. And this is all recorded on audio. He's got like a security system that's recording this all. And you can hear him talking to himself that he's going to kill these stupid kids when they come in. So he sees this kid break into his house. He shoots him. The kid falls down the stairs. You can hear him over the kid who's still alive, basically saying, this is what you get for, And so he shoots this defenseless kid again. Now the kid is broken into the house, but at that point he shoots him again. He moves the body away. He waits for the sister to come in. The sister comes in. He does the exact same thing to her. His gun even jams, and he says, "Oh, I'm going to get you." And then he goes and he gets a different gun and he shoots her. All of this is recorded on audio. It's pretty horrific to hear. So this goes before a judge, and he says, "Well, I have the right to defend my property. I have the right to, to shoot people who break into my property." And the judge rules basically, no. Yes, you do have the right to defend your property, but this was malicious. You're intentionally laying a trap for people that you know are going to be in the house, and even after you've disarmed them, you're murdering them. So he gets charged with 2 counts of murder for this. In fact, it's premeditated murder because he specifically knew this was going to happen. So this is kind of a similar situation to that. Whether like if somebody breaks into your house, wrong house, and they die, that's different than, okay, I know this person is going to try to steal from me. I'm going to set up a trap for him and then kill him. At that point, that's murder. That is not an eye for an eye. That's, I'm going to kill somebody for exchange for them trying to take my stuff. All right, let's see. Okay, verse 5, if a man causes a field or vineyard to be grazed over, or lets his beast loose in a field, and it feeds on another man's field, he shall make restitution for the best in his own field and his own vineyard. So if you let your cattle go and eat your neighbor's crops, you don't give them the leftovers, you give them the good stuff from your own crops. It's just fair. If a fire breaks out and it catches in thorns, so that stacked grain or standing grain in the field is consumed, he who started the fire shall make full restitution. Again, if you're starting fires, you're responsible for what happens with that fire. If a man gives his neighbor money or goods to keep them safe, and it is stolen from the man's house, then the thief is found, he shall pay double. If the thief is not found, the owner of the house shall come near to God to show whether or not he put his hand to his neighbor's property. For every breach of trust, whether it is an ox or a donkey or a sheep, for a cloak, for any kind of lost thing of which one says, this is it, the case both parties shall come before God. The one whom God condemns shall pay double to his neighbor. So again, this concept of stealing from somebody you pay back double is a pretty recurring theme. So if you're being sneaky about stealing, you're saying, yeah, I'll take care of your stuff. Oh no, somebody broke into my house and stole it, but you really kept it. Then this is something that has to be judged, and you pay back double. If a man gives to his neighbor a donkey or an ox or sheep or any beast to keep safe, and it dies, or it is injured, or it is driven away without anyone seeing it, an oath by the Lord shall be between both to see whether or not he has put his hand to his neighbor's property. The owner shall accept the oath, and he shall not make restitution. But if it is stolen from him, he shall make restitution to the owner. If it is torn by beasts, let him bring it as evidence. He shall not make restitution for what has been torn. So again, you're taking care of your neighbors, like you've got a ranch or whatever, you're taking care of your neighbor's animals. If you've intentionally stolen the animals, you'll pay for that. If a wolf breaks in and you're taking care of your neighbor's sheep and you had nothing to do with this wolf, you're not responsible for that. It's a tragic loss, but you're not being a thief. You're probably going to see some repeated principles here. If a man borrows anything from his neighbor and it is injured or dies, and the owner not being with it, he shall make full restitution. If the owner was with it, he shall not make restitution, for if it was hired, it came for its hiring fee. So this is, you take care of the things that are given to you to use. Laws about social justice. If a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall give her the bride price and make her his wife. If a father utterly refuses to give to him, he shall pay money equal to the bride price for virgins. So this is often misconstrued. This is talking about selling women into slavery, or this is talking about sexual assault. That is not what the verse here is saying, but rather this is basically if you have a man and a woman engaging with each other out of wedlock, then now you have a responsibility. Now you have a responsibility to take them as your wife. You don't get to just kind of sleep around with people, because now you're causing consequence. Now that they've got children to take care of and they don't have a husband. Right, yeah, a shotgun wedding. This is, God's in favor of shotgun weddings. This is not God saying go and do this thing, but God is saying if this thing happens, here's how you rectify it. If you are behaving immorally, man and woman are behaving immorally, then it is a responsibility of the man to make it right. And again, say, well, what if they don't love each other? Well, then they shouldn't have been together. This is kind of a mutual sort of agreement. You shall not permit a sorceress to live. Okay, that one's just kind of there all on its own. And this is sorcery is when somebody a miracle is when somebody does something by the power of God. Sorcery is when somebody does something by the power of the devil. This is why the Pharisees would accuse Jesus of sorcery later on, and that's blasphemous. Whoever lies with an animal shall be put to death. That's pretty straightforward. God made man and woman for each other, not any other options. Whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone shall be devoted to destruction. So again, this is a command against idolatry. You shall not wrong a sojourner or oppress him, for you are sojourners in the land of Egypt. You shall not mistreat any widow or fatherless child. If you do not mistreat them, if you do mistreat them and they cry out to me, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath will burn, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall become widows and your children fatherless. A sojourner is not somebody who just wanders into another country. A sojourner is somebody who specifically and legally goes into a country and lives according to the laws of the country. It's a guest in your house. It's somebody that you are happy to have in your house. So if you've got a foreign, like you think about like a diplomat, like a foreign diplomat makes an official visit to the country, he's a sojourner to that country. A sojourner usually lives there for a while, not just for a visit. But you're not supposed to treat, just because somebody's from a different country, you're not supposed to treat them badly, is basically. Just because they're not the same country as you, the same ancestry as you don't get to treat them badly. I'll try to finish the chapter. If you lend money to any of my people whom is poor, you shall not be like a moneylender to him. You shall not extract interest from him. If ever you take your neighbor's cloak and pledge, you shall return it to him before the sun goes down, for it is his only covering and his cloak for his body. Where else shall he sleep? And if he cries to me, I will hear. I am compassionate. So this is one of the places in the Bible where it actually talks about charging interest to being a bad thing. It's called usury later on. So when you lend something to somebody, it should be an opportunity for you to be charitable, not for you to make money off of the transaction. I'll let you borrow my truck to go and pick up a sofa or something like that. I don't expect you to pay me an interest for the truck just because, we're family in Christ. Yeah, that would be nice to do, yeah. But it's, if somebody's really hard up and you lend them something to help take care of them, you don't expect them you're not doing it to make a profit off of them. So the idea of lending is supposed to be a way for you to show God's love, because ultimately God is going to take care of you. And if you expect money for everything, then you're not trusting God to do this. All right, you shall not revile God nor curse a ruler of your people. That's pretty straightforward. You shall not delay to offer the fullness of your harvest from the outflow of your presses. Your harvest, the firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. You shall do the same with your oxen, with your sheep. 7 days it shall be with its mother. The 8th day you shall give it to me. You shall be consecrated to me. That means made holy, marked. Therefore you shall not eat any flesh that is torn by beasts in the field. You shall throw it to the dogs. So at this point, God is basically telling the people that you're going to behave differently. You're going to I'm making you a special people, you're going to act like a special people. So with that, I would like to close with the doxology.